You are listening to the Football Diehards podcast with your hosts, Justin Lonero and Bob Harris, sponsored by DraftKings. Sign up now using promo code DIEHARDS, DIEHARDS. Make a first-time $5 deposit, and you'll receive a free $3 ticket.
Hello and welcome to the Football Diehards podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lonero, on Twitter at Justin Lonero, along with my co-host, Mr. Bob Harris, on Twitter at Football Diehard, Mr. Kyle Dvorchak, on Twitter at FF Kyle the Kid. Regular season has come and gone. The playoffs have come and gone. The Super Bowl has come and gone. It is officially the NFL off-season, but it's 365, Mr. Harris.
It's the altar season, we call it here. The altar season, not the off season.
Right.
Look, the fun is going to be ongoing. I mean, we got the combine coming up, the 26th or so. Yep. Free agency tampering period starts the 11th. Signing period starts the 13th. Draft, the end of last week of April. Mini camps, OTAs, more mini camps, training camp, season's on. It'll be here before you know it. Everyone get ready. And we'll go into this with the New England Patriots being the champions of the NFL, the world champions once again. We talked about this, fellas, prior to the game. And look, my feeling was experience would win out. I'd say it did. I mean, not as much offense as we'd like, but the defensive game plan by the Patriots, very effective, holding the Rams to 3 points. Some points of interest, Todd Gurley, that's the enigma coming out of this game. Only 10 carries, 35 yards in this game. C.J. Anderson, not much better, but still, it doesn't really matter at this point. It's all about what Todd Gurley didn't do. Kyle Dvorchak, how are you, young man? And what are your thoughts on the whole Gurley situation?
Yeah, I'm not bad. I think we're all getting amped up for the awesome off season you said we've got coming up. It'll be Hall of Fame week before you know it, as we say. But yeah, it was, I don't want to be the kid who just wanted everyone to score 40 points, but come on. And in regards to the Todd Gurley thing, sort of worked out like we thought it would. I think we all thought if there's any semblance of Todd Gurley in there, he was 7. Expected a scoring more plays run. That looks something like the 10, the 12, and really that's kind of, if they're scoring what could have been. It was an interesting game. I think, we saw a lot of, it was just a weird game. I think was it the lowest scoring Super Bowl ever? Something like that?
It was.
Yeah, it was funny because I feel like, Justin, you can jump in on this as well. As we hit into December, especially down the stretch of December, defense has started becoming more the story, right? And I think that's, defenses win championships is the old cliche. It turned out to be the case this time. And a lot of that is, has to do with the coaching staff for the New England Patriots. This Bill Belichick fellow, he's pretty cagey. I don't know, not bad. Tom Brady played a solid enough game. Got a great game out of Julian Edelman, of course, Super Bowl MVP, 10 catches, 141 yards. Rob Gronkowski got his chances to chip in this one as well. Beyond that, it was pretty much, Sony Michel, the workhorse, that we kind of thought this was going to be the case. Yep. Justin, your thoughts on the Patriots and kind of spin that into Rob Gronkowski's future or lack thereof in your estimation?
Well, it was just like you said, offenses sell tickets, defense wins championships. We've been hearing this for 20-something years. And the Patriots defense, they got gashed on the ground earlier in the season. That was a way to beat them, and there were holes everywhere. And then they tightened up and became a unit. And the timing, when they peaked, it couldn't have been better. So and of course, Brian Flores is now going to be coaching the Miami Dolphins. So another one of Bill Belichick's, underlyings there. And then the last couple of weeks of the season, we saw Gronk that we wanted to see. The guy's got more money than God. He's been fiscally savvy, has not spent any money. Why wouldn't you preserve your body at this point in time? But it'll be interesting to monitor. Historically, I think that Rob Gronkowski is the best, probably one of the top 3 tight ends of all time. But is there a need for him to play anymore?
Yeah, I guess, for me, on the Gronk situation, I thought we got the biggest clue in the days leading up to the game, or the week before the game. He really went in depth on the kind of beating he takes on a weekly basis, his efforts to recover from that on a weekly basis, even, shaking out the cobwebs from the big blows to the heads, things like that. And you make a great point. He's taking care of his money. I think this will be it. I think he'll call a career. Talk to numerous Boston beat writers leading up to the Super Bowl and the night before the Super Bowl. and after the Super Bowl. And all of them feel the same, and most of them also pointing to that soliloquy he put out on his, on the number of collisions he faces per game. I guess, and look, one of the things I thought about this game going in as well was, it's a huge stage. Jared Goff, maybe not ready for that stage. Sean McVay, maybe not ready for that stage. This team isn't going away though, right? Does anyone think we're not going to see a big future for the Los Angeles Rams in terms of being for the foreseeable future, a perennial success?
Look, I mean, the Seahawks were the Seahawks, and they weren't the Seahawks of a couple of years ago. I think we all have a vision of the 49ers becoming better with Jimmy Garoppolo and Jerick McKinnon, and who knows who they're going to sign. We're hearing some AB buzz going there. So it'll be an interesting NFC West. But I mean, look, we're all in agreement that the league loves the Sean McVays, and I know that we're going to talk about Zach Taylor in a little bit. Sean McVay, innovative, creative, a coach that these players want to play for. They have the best running back in the game, arguably. You have Jared Goff is coming into his own after a terrible rookie season. Weapons everywhere. They're not going anywhere. There's no way. And they'll be a top 3 team in the NFC next year as well.
Kyle, back to Gurley, will the late season swoon be an issue come draft? Are you hoping for a discount come draft day because of that, the missed 2 games, the mysteries in the NFC Championship, certainly. And, what wasn't a great performance. I thought you laid it out pretty well. If there was more offense, maybe we'd seen more Gurley in this game, but we didn't. So that's going to weigh on the minds of people. And, it's always great. First thing I do is make the list of guys who disappointed people. Mm-hmm. And, those are guys I'm looking for to get a discount on. Right. Well, we get a discount on Todd Gurley, Kyle Dvorchak.
I think maybe in a few drafts, but that's with even last year there
right.
were some stupid, dumb, awful people who took David Johnson first overall in every single draft they did. Aside from that, maybe you get a closer. If this doesn't happen, we get Todd Gurley number 1 overall every single time. If this doesn't happen, but it did, and so maybe that leads some players like myself to take Saquon Barkley at 1 and Gurley at 2. But outside of that, no, I don't. Fantasy. Every year fantasy gamers are getting smarter and smarter because of this podcast, and this podcast is what I've always said, and I'll continue to say it. But just generally,
primarily because of me on this podcast.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
We can quibble.
That's right.
But I do think it's interesting because the last Jeff Fisher year, Gurley was horrible. Going into the first McVay season last year when he was fared reasonably well, you'll be surprised to learn. I was wanting a better discount. I didn't get any shares of him at all going into 2017 because I was really thinking, man, I need to get a better discount on this guy. Yep. I'm not going to get caught up in that. On the converse, or the flip side of that one, Sony Michel still in this, committee, but it seems like the Chameleon Patriots are laying on a rum-colored log or something. Because I think they tend to morph into whatever they need to be. Do you see this? You look at the talent at wide receiver. We don't know what's going to go on with the suspended or currently suspended Josh Gordon. The Patriots are paying his rehab. That sounds like the door is open to a return, but nothing you can count on. This seems like a team that's set up to run the ball effectively. Sony Michel in a good spot for you guys, Justin?
Oh, yeah. Yep. And, he was drafted obviously, the first round, everybody kind of opened their eyes, right? Just like they did with Rashad Penny. Wow, what are they doing drafting this guy early? Bill Belichick is smarter than us. He saw something. Sony Michel shared a backfield with Nick Chubb. Not a large role in the passing game like Dion Lewis had, but man, he's a bruiser, and we certainly saw that down the stretch. A running back that's able to withstand 25 carries a game. Like you said, that's kind of become their identity. I mean, you would think, Tom Brady, Tom Brady's, he's getting older, somewhat of a game manager, not a ton of weapons. Gronk's slowing down. Of course, Julian Edelman was Julian Edelman. We knew that was going to happen, but Sony Michel's going to be a bull. And honestly, LeGarrette Blount, you saw vintage LeGarrette Blount here in New England, 16, 17 touchdowns this season, close to 300 carries, well over 1,000 rushing yards. So he's going to be a large part of this offense, and obviously James White will remain a big part of that backfield as well.
Yeah, how do you feel about this? Do you see this, Kyle? Are we trending in that direction, or might they return in a totally different form next year based on new acquisitions, talent, etc. Just as likely?
No, I think it's most likely that what we saw from them last year is going to be similar to what we saw this year. And in regards to Sony Michel, I do think he'll probably be going, I would imagine, like second roundish in fantasy drafts, and that feels appropriate, but I don't think there's really any shot outside of like a LeGarrette Blount 20-some touchdown season or whatever that he joins the truly elite, like tier 1, Todd Gurley,
right,
Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley types. Because he played 13 games last year, started 8 of them, was injured a little bit, but this is generally a good enough sample for us to understand how they want to use him. 7 catches, 50 yards, no touchdowns on that, on 11 targets. They're not going to throw the ball to him almost at all. Even when really, there's just no way, given that the talent they have with Cordero Patterson, obviously, but more importantly, James White, and even Rex Burkhead, who's got his work down pretty evenly. It's just not going to happen. So I think he may end up going overdrafted almost. Like, as we talk about it now, I'm kind of, it's early, but
James White, RB7 in PPR for the rest. You're going to get him at a hell of a discount, and you're going to get him a hell of a lot cheaper than Sony Michel at this point in time. So RB7 for James White, 2018 PPR.
Yeah, it's some kind of, a little bit of a fade by him, certainly in the championship game, although we've seen him, I mean, look, he's as liable to catch 10 passes as he is not. So, he's going to be one of those guys going forward. So, I like to kind of stop and look back, and this is something we're going to grind through over the course of the entire Alter season is, kind of how we're lessons learned and how we're applying them. I'm just kind of getting my thoughts sorted out on this. I think so. Look, offensive, again, is produced at an amazing pace. Passing, touchdown passes, passing yardage, all these things way up. All those numbers way up. Like I said, we seem to see the defenses kind of surge late in the season. I think the normal thing we see is the offenses take some time to get together. I thought that was the case again this year, with some exceptions, Patrick Mahomes, being in the Chiefs being an exception. But I think for the most part, things kind of played out the way we want. The rules were set up for the passing game. Had a friend of the program, Scott Barrett from Pro Football Focus, on the Sirius show this week, and he pointed out just the way the rules are set up. I mean, the passing game is going to keep going. We saw some of that in the Super Bowl. I mean, Julian Edelman, you might want to cover that guy, but it's over the middle, and the running, passing over the middle is not what it was 5-10 years ago. Certainly, 10 years ago. The rules about hitting defenseless receivers, etc., have opened that part of the game up, and I think that's here to stay. So as we look at this going forward, I'm just wondering if there's anything in particular, Kyle, any things you're looking for or thinking about looking to leverage as we head into the 2019 season.
No, I think you really nailed it. That not only, it's not like you can call this an anomaly because we have evidence that clearly pointed to us moving towards a passing league with the rules favoring passing, favoring quarterbacks and their receivers, and then teams getting smarter, players or coaches rather, like Sean McVay stepping up, and just an infusion of young talent like we saw with Patrick Mahomes, and like I think we'll see with Baker Mayfield. But all of this wrapped up neatly is that just buy into the best offenses really at any cost. Because like we saw with running backs, for instance, you can plug any good running back, any decent running back in to any good system, they'll do well. We saw it with the litany of running backs on the Steelers as well as we saw it with the Chiefs. So just
C.J. Anderson late in the year. Right.
Finding ways to leverage these great offenses as opposed to the stupid people I mentioned before who thought, oh, David Johnson's volume, he'll capture all the team's touchdowns. They scored, I think, like 4 touchdowns all season. No,
right.
They were bad.
But to be
fair,
wasn't quite 4. His numbers, I mean, given the fact that they did not score a lot of touchdowns, it wasn't like he was a total washout, right? He was a disappointment, a huge disappointment. But given the play calling, the offensive lines, I think the talent can win out at some points. Justin, for you, what are you looking at? What are the things you noticed most heading into the off season, and what are you looking forward to leveraging as we head into the fall?
It's going to be a lot of the same, and I've taken the zero RB approach for a couple of years, and I think things are starting to balance out in terms of wide receivers and running backs in terms of value. But I agree with you 100% as far as crossing names off and circling names and seeing where the value is, because that's what we want. Depending on where you draft and in drafts, you're almost obligated in the top 3 or 4 picks to grab a running back. Saquon Barkley and Todd Gurley, probably Christian McCaffrey. And Zeke, at this point, we don't know what's up with Le'Veon Bell, and I don't like that. So I'm going to be pounding on wide receivers because, look, diamonds in the rough, they come along, the Phillip Lindsays of the world. So I'm hunting for value. I'm hunting for roles, and you're certainly these running backs that you want to take. And we mentioned Sony Michel, and as much as I love Sony Michel, this is a guy that has zero involvement in the passing game. So most of the leagues we play in are PPR format. So you're banking. He's almost touchdown dependent when it comes to that. So value is the name of the game, and also opportunity.
Yeah, running backs like to bust. There's another one coming in 20 minutes. Hang tight. Yeah. And I think, solidified for me what I've known for a number of years. You got to draft a tight end early because there's only a couple of them. And there's going to be probably one less. But this year, I mean, look, George Kittle has pretty well established himself, I think, in the top 10, Pro Football Focus threw out some numbers. No player in the PFF era has ever racked up more yards after catch in a single season than Kittle did. Not just tight ends, but any position. 873 yards after the catch, 200 more than they've ever seen from a tight end. You want a guy like that. Is there some concern that maybe Jimmy Garoppolo is more of a deep thrower? No. George Kittle's a deep receiver. I mean, he is the Odell Beckham of tight ends. But it'll be him. It'll be Zach Ertz will remain up there. Travis Kelce, of course, will be in that conversation. We'll see what happens with guys like O.J. Howard. There's some concern there because Bruce Arians tends to treat his tight ends like offensive tackles who occasionally catch the ball. So hopefully that changes with a talent like that. But I mean, it's a pretty narrow band, and I think early tight end, drafting will be something I continue to do. There just won't be a guy named Rob Gronkowski in that list. Hopefully he retires and takes that lure away from me. I don't know that we need it, but I mean, pay attention to offensive line, movement, acquisitions, attrition over this offseason. We saw in Buffalo how horrible that offensive line became, losing 3 starters. We saw what teams like Cincinnati put an emphasis on improving their offensive line. It reflected in the numbers of their Joe Mixon, I think, benefited from that to a large degree. Yeah, we saw it, we've seen it time and time again. So, and so let's jump into some news, you guys. And I guess, since we brought up the transient natures of the running backs and, something we need to watch is there's always developments at the position. This week, a rather, at least a splash move is the Browns signed Kareem Hunt. A little bit of a surprising development. We knew a number of teams were interested. The Browns make sense. First of all, Hunt is on the commissioner's exempt list. After he was released by the Chiefs last November 30th, lied about the incident there was video, him shoving a woman to the ground, kicking her, etc. So he's still got to be reinstated. Still faces a lengthy suspension. My guess is at least 6 games, maybe more, before he's eligible to play. My Twitter almost broke after this happened, of fantasy owners lamenting this move as the death knell for either Nick Chubb or Duke Johnson. And hey, Duke Johnson, maybe we saw the death knell last year and his name was Nick Chubb. So levels of panic, Justin. Talk everybody off the ledge on Nick Chubb, or push them off if you'd prefer.
Well, it certainly makes things cloudy, right? I mean, going into this offseason, Matt Waldman absolutely pegged Nick Chubb, and I think that he showed his true colors, and Nick Chubb is going to be the running back of this team's future. Now, they threw some money at Duke Johnson last offseason, did not have as much involvement as he should have. Now, like you said about Kareem Hunt, he's looking at least 6 games, potentially a year. I'm thinking it's going to be more than 6 games. They got him on the cheap. Maybe they'll move him. I think he's going to be a restricted free agent after this season. Tonight, Nick Chubb is a top 15 running back in any fantasy circle. You're not going to see, Kareem Hunt is not going to see the football for at least mid-season, so I'm not that nervous, but it's interesting to watch John Dorsey stand by Kareem Hunt. A lot of familiarity there. Of course, Kareem Hunt went to Toledo.
Dorsey drafted him in Kansas City. He knows everything about him. Has looked him up and down. Is very familiar with him. Kyle, you're in the area, not in Cleveland directly, but in that area. What's the local vibe like in the wake of this move?
I mean, I think we're Bob, yourself, and I are more of the team running backs don't matter. At least they don't matter as much. But I know a lot of people who are at least excited to have a guy as talented as he is. I think it's interesting to sign. There's definitely been some backlash that's too soon, and I don't really who is anyone to say what is soon or not? But
right.
I think it's interesting just to use it on what I think we could all agree is one of the more expendable positions. But in terms of, I guess, roping it back into fantasy, like you said, I was going to agree with you, this was the death knell of Duke Johnson, but last year, we already had that. So you're absolutely right that was pretty much it. And if you smelled the resurgence for some reason, I think this finally does it, and unfortunately he is under contract for a few more years. I just don't see what you could want in him. He's clearly just the passing down back, and one that they don't really seem to want to utilize. Now they've brought in another talented running back, so that's over for him. And for Chubb, I think when Justin said it muddies the waters, I think it muddies the ADP a little bit. Maybe we get a little bit of a discount, and that's what I love. I agree with you, Bob, that this does not muddy my opinion of Chubb at all, but hopefully if he falls a spot or two, that's just value I'm grinding out there.
So I thought, I watch Good Morning Football. I think most fans do, and Kyle Brandt had an excellent take. A lot of people feeling angsty about this, but John Dorsey's job is to put the best football team, build the best roster possible in terms of talent. Kareem Hunt we know what he is on the field. Look, we've all seen what he is off the field. I don't know, at what point we've decided people get a life sentence for transgressions in their youth. It's a horrible thing. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying he seems to be taking a lot of steps to better himself. Hopefully he'll learn from this. And it's a long ways off. I mean, he may never play a snap for the Cleveland Browns. They've basically secured the rights to a high-end talent for the next 2 seasons at a bargain price. And that's what a GM's job is securing talent, and the cheaper you get it, the better you are. We'll see how it all plays out. I'm not a freak. I got to say, though, in terms of Cleveland Brown, Baker Mayfield clapping back, telling Arian Foster to shut the F up on the social medias is pretty cool. Mayfield's an interesting character. Look, mixed feelings about him coming into the league, obviously, as well. The production was remarkable. He retains his offensive coordinator. And, so there was a little bit of something on Twitter this weekend of Baker dancing, and Arians, basically said, your quarterback, the Browns posted said your quarterback would never, and he's dancing away. And Arian Foster said would never, not could never, would never. And, Mayfield just came right back. Respected you before. I get it. You're too cool to show any personality. Everybody's different though. No need to speak on it. Okay. Well done, Baker Mayfield. He's going to be fun to watch this year. How do we value him going into this season, Justin, Baker Mayfield?
Well, look, the kid has it. The kid has the moxie. He's got the personality. I know we had some skepticism, but look, pick one the NFL draft. As soon as Tyrod Taylor got hurt, you could just feel as a fan, as somebody who watches the game, just a complete turnaround with that Browns team.
I think it's interesting and I'm going to go ahead and spin this. We were going to talk about the Kyler Murray, declaring that he will play, spurning the Oakland Athletics and all the money they gave him, handing a boatload of it back, and saying he's committing to playing football. He'll certainly be number one pick, the Oklahoma quarterback. He's 5'10". They list him 5'9". I think they're listing him generously. If you listen to the Draftnik type people, that 5'10" is pretty generous, and 5'9" would be more in line. But look, he's a dynamic playmaker, and that brings us to something. The Arizona Cardinals hired Cliff Kingsbury. They have the first pick overall in the draft. And back in October, before his Texas Tech team was about to get pummeled by Oklahoma, Kingsbury talked Murray up. If I had the number one pick, I'd take him. Oh, well, guess what? You have the number one pick. Except he really doesn't. The Cardinals have the number one pick. They have Josh Rosen there. 10th. The Cardinals did a lot to throw a lot of hot water. Anything can happen, right? I'm not going to dismiss anything, but connecting these dots, holding, Cliff Kingsbury to a comment made to puff up an opponent, which what else is he going to do before he plays them? I think, and now kind of spinning this into the Arizona Cardinals are definitely drafting this kid seems like a reach. Number one, what are you going to do with Josh Rosen? You going to get something back for him? Not after last year. I think you're kind of stuck with him, and that's why you brought Cliff Kingsbury in. Your thoughts, Kyle, on so I do want to say, though, just before we get into this, look, the plan is clear if you're an NFL franchise, as clear as hiring a Sean McVay assistant to run your offense. Finding a young quarterback you don't have to pay, and then paying up at every other position to get to the Super Bowl. That's the blueprint right now. So is Kyler Murray going to be that guy, that kind of player who can move right into a starting lineup, whether it's Arizona or not? Kyle, what are your thoughts on his level of play?
I mean, I haven't. I'm not the film nut who will go down and watch hours and hours of the tape. Not hashtag the tape watching. But I mean, he looked incredibly talented. And as far as the Cardinals thing goes, yeah, it's a complete non-story. And we'll have a lot of those throughout the off season because it is the off season. I mean, Murray looks good. It is. I don't know. I don't think there's ever been a guy of his stature to be successful, but there has been a lot of good work that shows that height really doesn't correlate to anything in the NFL. And part of the idea is maybe that just the college system and the NFL scouts do a good job of weeding out short quarterbacks who can't succeed from short quarterbacks who can succeed, and vice versa with a lot of tall quarterbacks. Just because he's tall doesn't be good. So I think the system has it figured out to an extent, or at least has height figured out to an extent, that if he goes highly in the draft, I think he'll have just as good of a chance as any other quarterback going at roughly his range.
Justin, you're short. Comment, please.
Yes, well, so is Drew Brees and Russell Wilson, too. And they've turned out to be okay.
Yeah, Baker Mayfield's not a really tall guy either, by the way.
No, he's not. He's certainly not. Look, John Lau, our colleague at footballdiehards.com, had Josh Rosen as his number one last year.
He was mine as well.
Is yours as well. And look, despite the character issues that we've talked about that you could care less about, I mean, the kid, he's a baller. I think it is fair to look at that Arizona Cardinals team as a whole, call the 2018 season a wash. The offensive line was putrid. David Johnson wasn't David Johnson. And Josh Rosen, bumps and bruises.
Look, it all ties into that offensive line, right? I mean, I think that's your starting point there. And coaching sucked. I mean, Steve Wilkes, I'm not knocking him as a head coaching candidate or whatever, one and done. But bringing in Mike McCoy, a guy who'd failed at multiple spots in recent years, seemed to be a bad thing. But it's that offensive line is the starting point for the horrors that we saw. So. It'll be interesting to see. I think Kingsbury, when he came in, the first thing he did, they wanted to know what his plan was for turning Josh Rosen into a frontline quarterback. So we'll see how it all plays out. And Kyle's called it right. There's going to be a lot of non-stories. One of those a day will be about Antonio Brown. In fact, 4 of them a day will be about Antonio Brown. As we're recording this on Tuesday night this week. The first news blurb was, Brown guilty of reckless driving, paid his fine, driving 100 miles an hour. Then about a half an hour later, he throws out on his Instagrams, see y'all, bye, I'm gone, been good knowing you. So everyone took that as a big deal. And then subsequently, Adam Schefter reported that he has officially requested his trade. I don't see anything new here, Justin. Tell me what I'm missing. I mean, did he ask for a trade? I think that's kind of been obvious when you don't show up for the biggest game of the year. You kind of want out. And so the drama is ongoing. Any expectation that we'll get released soon? Is this him asking for the trade? The thing that's going to make a big change here?
They're going to have to eat some money. $20+ million.
So they already are going to eat the $32 million they gave him the last 2 years.
Yeah. I mean, they're not going to trade him within the division. That would just be stupid. I don't know what's going on here. He's a diva, no doubt. But, I mean, the hair the other day, it looked like, in the facial hair. I don't know if this is a guy that's had too many concussions or what's going on. But.
Well, we'll just say there's a little bit of a domestic violence issue that he was not arrested for, but that also makes the news. And I think that's what I talk about with the non-news. There's going to be if Antonio Brown slaps a gnat flying around his head, it's going to be on TMZ, right? Yep. So this is going to be something we're going to have to get ready for. I guess to put a fine point on it, Kyle, we had talked previously about this. I think, the possible range of outcomes, San Francisco 49ers, sure, seems reasonable. Starting wide receiver for the Pittsburgh Steelers, it's still in the picture. Seems much less likely with each passing day. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. In general, I think as we've learned, Pittsburgh's willing to be patient almost to a fault. So as you were talking about, it's going to be non-news for a while. But as the days pass, you slowly see the meter shifting towards him leaving. I do think now as opposed to, a few weeks ago, it looks more likely that he won't be a Pittsburgh Steeler this coming year. But like you said, it's a lot of non-news basically until the day it happens.
Right. And look, we love this. It's what keeps us going all offseason. I would say there's enough other stories. Demaryius Thomas was released by the Houston Texans. Real news. Huge news. No, not huge news, but real news. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of talk about, a lot of speculation on how things will play out, talking Philadelphia, questioning Golden Tate's future with the club, questioning Nelson Aguilar's, future with the club. We had talk there last week of players, teammates, not being all that impressed with Carson Wentz's demeanor in practice, kind of the way he handled himself as team leader. Those were knocked down then subsequent to that. So there'll be a lot of those kind of stories going on. And as we move into March, then it'll start, the things will start ramping up on the league year when people can start making moves on the 11th or start the tampering. You mentioned the money, Justin, by the way. Trading Antonio Brown before June 1 would be a cap hit of more than $21 million. So it'll be interesting to see how bad they want to get rid of him. So looking forward to that. We want to touch base on the coaching changes that we mentioned previous. Brian Flores intrigues me because I don't know a damn thing about him, right? I mean, the mystery man, seems like an all business kind of guy, comes across, really well in the press conference. I like the Belichickian approach. Seems to work for New England, but are you a 4-3 or are you 3-4? Whatever the personnel is. Brings Chad O'Shea, the Patriots wide receivers coach, with him as the offensive coordinator. Brings in Jim Caldwell as the senior offensive assistant. Kyle, where are we at on this one in your estimation? What do you think of this move?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about generally moves we've seen prior that we kind of want to see the offensive-minded coaches get the head coaching jobs. So I think it'll be interesting that they chose to go with the defensive coach. But I do like what you said about his idea of just being flexible to whatever talent he has. I think that's something that we're learning more and more in the NFL is just sitting with whatever strategy you think works right now is an incredibly bad way to do things. It's sort of move with the times, move with your opponent, roll with the punches. So in terms of just quality of hire, outside of the fact that it's hard to tell exactly what his philosophies are, yeah, it seems like a good move. And the Dolphins don't really have a lot of fantasy players to mess with anyway, so...
A lot of talk this past season and going forward. Ryan Tannehill almost certainly talked to Clay Ferraro from WLPG TV in Miami, one of my favorite, local guys. And talked to him Saturday night. He just, Tannehill's gone. But there's a lot of talk, tanking is an ugly word, but maybe the eye is on the 2020 quarterback class more so than the 2019 quarterback class. We all know there'll be a number of free agents out there. Nick Foles will be mentioned. I don't know. I'm not sure why you pay for Nick Foles, when you're going to have to pay franchise money for him. When really it seems like the game plan is to draft the young guy and build around him. As I mentioned earlier, you're paying that rookie contract. You have that advantage, and you see many teams have taken advantage of that. I don't know why you'd want to go out and pay for a Nick Foles who has alternately been journeyman-esque and then the best quarterback ever. I mean, I'm not sure which one I'm getting. And teams like Minnesota and Denver would tell you that paying up at the position maybe not the best idea or as good an idea as they thought. So we'll see. But a lot of talk of that. Some decent personnel at running back, but not a lot at wide receiver. The disappointment of the rookie Mike Gesicki at tight end, although, there's hope for him to rebound rookie tight ends kind of thing. But it'll be interesting to see what they do. And the defense, of course, will be the thing we all keep an eye on. But I just think the mystery, the optimism of the unknown. I don't know hell about Flores. I mean, I just know he's kind of had a meteoric rise. He's worked for Bill Belichick. The fact that we haven't heard much of him or about him kind of makes him interesting, appealing. We do know a little bit about Zach Taylor, who was hired by the Cincinnati Bengals. We know the only thing that matters. He knows Sean McVay.
Right.
I mean, that's the thing. We see a lot of that. Everyone's trying to hire the next Sean McVay. He joins the ranks of guys like Kingsbury, who he mentioned, Matt LaFleur, who also knows Sean McVay, Freddie Kitchens' promotion. So Taylor's making a huge leap, though. He spent the last 2 seasons with the Rams as a position coach, wide receivers in 2017, quarterbacks in 2018, just 35 years old. Served as offensive coordinator on an interim basis in 2015 in Miami. And so not a lot of experience, but the Bengals were quick. Number one, the Bengals are notoriously cheap. So I'm sure that price maybe had something to do with this. But he's got a pretty good arsenal of talent there in Joe Mixon, AJ Green back on the field working out, has the boots off. He's resumed workouts after the toe surgery. You have a pretty decent offensive line if they can stay healthy. Kyle, I don't know. What do you think about this one?
This is what I was talking about. Much more excited about a move like this in terms of the offensive upside. But as a team, really, you should mostly be looking for offensive upside. If you have to prioritize your dollars, your positions you have available. We know that the NFL is moving in an offensive way, as we talked about, so you want to prioritize optimizing your offense, if anything. So this is one I am particularly excited for. I do agree they have a lot of weapons. I'm not really sure what A.J. Green has left to offer. As we've seen, he's good when he can play, but it's hard to see him still out there very often. But optimistically, he comes back healthy. And we saw Tyler Boyd, who I think was a great prospect coming out of college, not awfully athletic. But, oh, man, I loved him. He was a great receiver. He dominated Pittsburgh's, basically their entire offense because they had James Conner, who didn't end up being able to play his final season. So they had Tyler Boyd returning punts. They had him lining up in Wildcat, getting handoffs. He really did a ton for that offense. So when he performed lackluster at best at the Combine, it was a bit disappointing, but I always thought there was hope. My hope finally, years in the making, got to cash that in this season. So I'm excited specifically for Tyler Boyd.
Your Tyler Boyd love has been requited. We're happy for you on that front. Good that you were able to pop that particular cherry. So, I guess, look, I think having Green back, if nothing else, makes Boyd a more effective, right? I mean, that's kind of I don't know that he's wide receiver one. And I think, look, these are things we'll grind through over the course of time, especially with Pittsburgh, as we see the moves that happen. Is Juju Smith-Schuster really capable of being a wide receiver one? Is the Steelers' long history of developing wide receivers, starting with Antonio Brown, right? It goes back before that, but I mean, none more prominent. But they have some young guys on that roster, and talk to some local people who really think that they have the talent on hand to survive losing the best receiver in the NFL. So, and the best running back maybe in the NFL. So a lot of interesting stuff. We'll be going through all of it over the course of the coming months. We'll be focusing. We'll have an eye on like Kyle, I'm not a draftnik. Justin, he's into the draft Twitter. I'm pretty sure on it all the time. And we'll have guests on that help us navigate this. The rookie class. We'll cover the free agency. It's going to be a good time. Guys, any last thoughts there from you, Kyle?
The AAF. We didn't talk about the most important football league going on right now. Did you guys watch any?
True. I watched it all and was variously impressed and unimpressed. They're going to have some, look, I'm going to put this kind of, some football is better than no football.
Yeah.
Let's go with that.
Perfect way to summarize it. I'll say this. The timing of it, the launch is impeccable because it's this little dry spell and boom, all of a sudden there's football and the ratings were through the roof. But
right.
And that was
basketball.
The initial splash. I think is this league going to be able to sustain that? And I don't know that it is. I think people are going to want to see stars to a degree. How much Bishop Sankey do you want to see? How much Zach Spacey?
I've seen all the Bishop Sankey I need to see.
How much Trent Richardson do you want to see? 25 carries, 50 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean,
need a little more passing. There's a lot of passing. I'm looking forward to more passing. I think it's interesting. They have some high-level coaching talent. I think some of the rules that they've implemented that probably are heading for the NFL and official, in particular the Sky Judge, that seems like something the NFL could benefit from immediately, said the Saints. But some of the other rules, the kickoff, not having a kickoff, the faux onside kick they do where they put you at a 4th and 12 from the 28 as long as you're down by 17 points. There's 5 minutes. I mean, just some interesting, changes, adjustments based on, some of the things we've seen in the NFL recently. Maybe the NFL can, test those out and move in that direction. I don't know, Kyle. Do you see a lot of good play? Is there anything that jumped out at you aside from Trent Richardson being totally amazing and Christian Hackenberg not?
Yeah, I know. It's so funny that we saw, really two of the biggest flameouts I can remember in the past 5 to 10 years in Christian Hackenberg, just because of how, like he was like Nathan Peterman levels of bad, and Trent Richardson because he was so highly drafted and also as bad. And the dichotomy of one of them still being awful, but Trent Richardson actually maybe not awful. So, I think it'll be interesting to see if, my biggest question is, can this actually turn into a minor league system as opposed to just an offshoot? If there's football league, because I really do think having avenues for college athletes to potentially take their talent somewhere else and frankly get paid would be nice.
Look, the NFL is going to be a passing game. I saw a lot of receiving talent, a lot of guys that, have struggled, to make rosters, but have flashed in preseason stuff. Maybe if they get a little more, time on the field and game, situations, it'll work in their favor. And we all know there's not enough quarterbacks to go around. The AAF is proving that. There's still not enough to go around with the addition of another league. Would it be interested to see Colin Kaepernick jump into that league and eat it alive and see what would happen then?
That'd be cool.
Yeah, maybe we'll see something like that, because I do think he would, I think he would eat that league alive. So
what will the XFL be like?
The XFL will be very Vince McMahonish, I'm guessing, right? I mean, look, there's still things from the original XFL that we like, that, the Sky Cam. Hell, for that alone, it was worth having an XFL.
You'll have more plays like the issue with the Saints and Rams. You'll have body slams on the sideline, and he hate me.
Look, there was the big hit in the what was the game where
it was the Fleet, San Diego Fleet, San Antonio, whatever.
That nameless Fleet quarterback who started was just about got beheaded, and I'm going, where's the flag?
I think it was the Fleet who took Josh Johnson, and they took Josh Johnson.
Yeah,
Josh Johnson plays for the Redskins. Redskins end up, I believe it's the Redskins who signed him to a backup deal. He's like, no thanks, AAF. So this poor guy is like, well, guess I'm the hero who has to step up in the stead of Josh Johnson, and then gets popped.
Right. It was then, they'll go through a series of quarterbacks. I'm also going to petition Mike Martz get some looser fitting coaching gear, just if he doesn't mind. It's very uncomfortable staring at him. So
$75,000 a year they're getting paid, right? Is that everybody?
Right. Look, I'm not against it. I have to talk about it on the serious show and talk about it here. So I'll be watching. It's, again, some football better than no football. Justin, wrap it up.
Yeah, again, and this show is brought to you by DraftKings. Despite the inability to play NFL football, you want to go ahead and sign up on DraftKings using our promo code DieHards. We're going to be with you all year long, all off season, through the draft, getting you ready for fantasy drafts come July, August. We'll have some best ball episodes. We'll also have some fantastic guests on this podcast. The Mike Clays of the world, the Josh Hermsmeyers of the world. Plenty of guests to come. And I look forward to talking to you gentlemen all off season.
I think that's a fair take there, young man. And there is, by the way, AAF Daily. There is AAF Best Ball. There's all kinds of stuff going on. So no shortage of contest. So we'll probably mention it. Kyle will be the resident AAF expert. There's no doubt about that. Clearly has already risen above the other two of us. So kudos to him on that. And with that, we'll call it a night.
Yeah, I remember there's no AAF teams that are particularly close to me, and there's no players that I was like, this was my guy. He didn't make in the NFL, but he's, everybody has those guys. Like, I think Kenny Bell is that guy for some reason.
Yeah.
But my guy is Zach Zenner, who's obviously still in the NFL and primed for probably a top 12, I'd say, running back season. So I didn't have any team. I was wearing a purple shirt, and I was like, I'll just the team that's purple. Turns out the Atlanta Legends, who sucked. So go AAF. I'll be sure to be reporting back every single week on all the happenings of the AAF and my Atlanta Legends. For myself, Bob, Justin, thanks for listening. You can find us on Twitter, Bob Football Diehard, Justin at Just Lonero, and myself at FF Kyle the Kid. Thanks for listening.